Welcome to Shawnee Grows. We are going to discuss worms in the garden, worms in your house. Who's got worms? Team Replay, I want to hear from you. Tell me what you know about worms or worm bins. Are you a worm farmer? Have you ever purchased or used worm castings? Let's see who's in the chat. I know that we have Diva in the dirt. First, Mushroom Mark was helping set up for this lovely live stream. excuses, you snooze, you lose. Amaponian is the first from Venezuela. Thank you for joining us. CR, Creative Redundancy, is not going to be here the whole time, but we appreciate any amount of time you have for us, and you can always catch the rest on the replay. Food Forest Permaculture is here. He has a video that he posted today about our topic, and I did link it in the description. Arlene, good to see you. Thumbs up, everybody. Storms, Radios, and Cats, hello. Welcome to our worm conversation about vermiculture. Jay Dixon, good day to all from Huron County, Midwestern Ontario, Canada, in the lee of Lake Huron. Welcome to this. We're going to talk about great worm stuff. The Backwoods Misfit, good to see you. Hello. Mushroom Mark made it back. Hello. Good to see you. Jay Dixon, next time you're doing a live, let me know and I will shout it out for you on other gardening live streams. We are going to do one tomorrow, Monday, 9 p.m. Central, and we're talking about companion plants. The whole companion conversation is happening tomorrow. I don't have it scheduled, but it's happening. Let's see. Diva says hi to Howie from Food Forest Permaculture. Storm Shadows and Cat says, I think YouTube needs to do away with the top chat and just have live chat as a default. Yeah, what's the purpose of top chat, right? Who even uses top chat? Thank you all for being on live chat to see every single person that's here talking. We're so glad that Mushroom Mark made it in the chat. Dave Knight, hi to the compost crew. Good to see you. Dave, do you have worms? Joanne Glass, hey, good to see you. Radio Jonesy, I like your boomerang very much. Homestead Aquarius, you found the party. Welcome in. Oops, hello. Welcome to our worm conversation. Oh, Miss Sharon, hey. I'm so glad you could make it. Your worms are in the garden, Jay Dixon. Well fed and housed. That's a good place for them. We're going to talk about having them in the garden or having them in the house. Why would you do that? What's the purpose? It's good to see everyone here. CR says wiggles in this comment. Okay. I think we've greeted everyone. Let me know and I can shout it out on Gardener Scott's live at 11. Yeah, it's Monday tomorrow, 9 p.m. Central Time. Companion planting we're going to talk about. Your Diva, her worms are in her chicken's tummies. That's a good place for them too. Kentucky Goblins on the road. What are you doing on the road? It's flooding there. You should be at home. Road's getting covered. I know. I'm nervous about. You guys have a whole nother system coming in 2 days. The weather. Dave Knight likes to have worms for fishing. What kind of worms do you use for your fishing, if you don't mind me asking? Gandalf Smith, welcome to our worm conversation. Good to see you. Adam Burley, hello. Says to Jay, you're up late. Good to see you. Okay. So good to see so many people. Gee, Mama, I just saw you. Grows hard in the garden. Welcome. Do you have worms, G Mama? What do you know about worm castings? KK KK's Travel and Education Vlogs. Hi. Welcome to this conversation. Hit the thumbs up while you're here. Let's get into it. So, vermiculture and worm castings. Why it's important for the garden. We're going to discuss that. Worms in the news. Have you heard worms in the news lately? And at the end, I'm going to show you and discuss how does a worm eat? Do you know? Do you know how a worm eats and what happens in its body? If you want to know, stay till the end. Okay, let's get into the definition here. Get our presentation going about our lovely worm castings. So vermiculture, it's the process of using worms, and there's usually specific types of worms, like red wigglers you'll hear about, to break down organic waste, so your kitchen scraps, green and browns, into nutrient-rich compost, vermicompost. All right, why is this even important? Well, it's reducing kitchen waste that would otherwise go to landfills. Okay. It's a natural soil enhancer, rich in nutrients like nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, which are all those things that help plants grow stronger and healthier. It's a way to recycle household waste and create a circular system in your home garden, even those in town with balconies and container gardening. You can do this. And guess what? It's fun and educational for kids and families. We did worm bins last winter. So that humus in earthworm castings helps create soil's capacity for water retention, improve soil aeration, and anchor plant nutrients that would leach away and be lost. So we're going to dig deeper into the soil structure, the nutrient content, the plant health, pest control, and soil health. So these worm castings in the soil, which is the worm poop we're talking about here, everybody. We get to talk about poop from the worms. Soil aggregates, which can improve sandy or clay soils. They improve drainage, the air circulation, so those roots can penetrate the soil and reach out and grab and speak with the rhizophagy about what minerals and nutrients they want. And they talk to the microorganisms and they go, hey, I need a little of this. And they go, okay, here it is. So our plants can have healthy immune systems. Nutrient content. They are a natural way to fertilize your garden, your seedlings. They help those microbes. The humic acid in worm castings helps the plants absorb the nutrients. That plant health, that plant immune system that we talked about in our sustainable food systems live stream, especially in the regenerative agriculture conversation, we need to have healthy plants to have healthy guts in ourselves when we eat those plants, and healthy animals' guts as well when those animals eat these plants. So this can help improve germination and seedling growth. Does anybody in here use worm castings in their seed starting blend? They can promote healthy flowering and fruit production. Pest control. Worm castings have a natural resistance to insect infestation. They contain chitinase, which is a natural compound that helps suppress disease and control root knot nematodes. Hello. Again, we were talking about that soil health. It can help remove damaging organisms like fungus and bacteria, which we do need a balance of. It's not like they're all bad, okay? And they can also remove heavy metals and other toxins from the soil. So, of course, we have the earth, okay? We can do this in the earth. We have the lovely Pathway Soil Bank, compost piles, green mulch, chopping and dropping, the layers of brown and green. If you don't know what I'm talking about, where brown materials are aged things like hay, oats. We have cardboard, shredded leaves, sawdust, chipped wood, cardboard egg cartons, shredded paper, paper towels, straw, toilet paper rolls, wood ash, dried grass, and then our green materials, vegetable scraps, algae, green leaves, grass clippings, kelp or seaweed, green shrub prunings, tea bags, alfalfa meal, hay, coffee grounds, animal manure, house plants, weeds without seeds, old flower bouquets, hair from your dog or yourself, and aquarium water. Fresh water only, not salt water. So you can have a healthy worm like experience, right? With just doing pathway soil banking, with just having your compost pile, with just interacting outside and keeping your garden mulched and chopping and dropping. But there's also that thing called a worm bin with worm farming. So to do this, there's going to be some materials needed, right? So first, here's just some more pictures on the benefits of worm castings. Healthier roots. This is a picture of the inoculated versus not inoculated, healthy seedlings, um, healthy plants, right? So the materials we will get into after we check on the chat here, which is always difficult because it doesn't pin where I left off. Night crawlers for fishing, says Food Forest Permaculture. Those are the big fat ones. Mushroom Mark says, Dave Knight, what kind of fish? That's more interesting. What kind of fish he goes for. People are having conversations. What is this? I've had a Verma hut for years. Verma hut. Fantastic. Kentucky Goblin, I have worms. Got it. Good. We all should have some out there. Worms are fascinating, Adam, especially for kids when they go to feed the worm bin and then they're digging in it and picking them up and looking at them. Okay, I'm not gonna stay too long. Okay, go to bed, get some sleep. That's good for you. You got to get sleep. Check the replay. Worm eats from Uber Eats delivery. Oops says Canadian flat tails. All right, all right. Yes, have a good night, KK Travel. Diva says, I have billion red wigglers. My chickens are not fond of them. So they are super prolific. Yeah, they just keep creating more red wigglers because they're not, the chickens aren't eating them. Troy Sutton, hello. Welcome to the worm chat. Worm poop is some good stuff, says Joanne. That's right. Food Forest Permaculture. Worms will eat you when you die, and you have a green burial. Burial. Yay, that's right. Gear Gryden 19. Haven't used worm compost in my seed starting, but mixed some in the soil before I transplant them. Fantastic. Yep, when you dig that hole to put the plant in, you just sprinkle a little worm castings in, stir it up. Old Man King Homestead, welcome to our conversation this evening. I welcome becoming lunch for a healthy soil biome. Yes. Do connect with one another. If you see a channel you don't know, visit them. Save it to watch later. Come back here. Hello, Scott. We're talking about worms. Worms are the intestines of Earth, says Food Forest Permaculture. That's a good sentence. Gear says, thanks for coming out and supporting Shiny Grows tonight, folks. I hear if you hit the thumbs up, your harvest will be many. Oh, that was a fun sentence. Amaponian, too sleepy. I'm just going to put my head in a pillow and continue listening. Fantastic. Always catch the replay for all the images tomorrow when you are well rested. Let's get back over here. So if we want to actually do this bin thing that I keep talking about, where you have a bin, it can be outside, it can be inside. The reason I had a bin inside is because the red wigglers are what are recommended for the small bin composting system, because they eat at a certain level in the soil, like kind of surface eaters, versus like a nightcrawler or earthworm. They eat much lower in the whole soil food web. So for me to have a bin with red wigglers in them outside with my type of winters, like for example, our high next week is -2 Fahrenheit, which is like -18 Celsius, I think, they wouldn't survive. So I would bring the bin in the wintertime, and I do have a basement, so I would keep them in a basement. We can talk about temperatures where their home should be. And then I would bring the bin back outside in the non-winter time. So your bins can be anything, like Plastic Rubbermaid, which I know I said the word plastic. We did Rubbermaid totes when we did ours. It's just, I've seen people use tubs. I've seen people use old laundry machines, a bucket, a tote. You're preparing the bin. There's holes that you drill in the lid and in the sides for ventilation and a couple on the bottom for drainage. And then you're going to add a layer of bedding. So we can talk about the bedding. So here's what one looks like, a bin. The stacked tray system is another one. The flow through system, a lot of the time the worms prefer to live near the surface. So then, the worm castings can fall through the bottom as they are created. The bedding materials, shredded brown cardboard, pure peat moss, coconut coir are things that people have used. Your leaves. Let's see. That's like what I used was leaves, definitely. The worms, we're going to look at the worms in a little bit. Food scraps, your vegetable and fruit scraps, coffee grounds, eggshells. We're going to talk about what to avoid and what they really like, the moisture content. So you're preparing the bin, you're adding the worms, you're adding the food scraps, and you're covering it and positioning it in a cool shaded location between 55 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is this coconut coir or peat moss? This must be coconut coir. I don't know. Anybody? Straw, hay, leaves, wood chips. Those are things that people use. So then this is an example of what you would need. They just use a regular tote. They have the drill with whatever bit. I do have links in the description to these, and I'm going to show where you can look at a video later that does give you a video walkthrough of how to build a bin, and in the description of that video she gives you a link to a free guide on how to care for your worms, and I'm going to show you where you can buy worms if you want to do a bin in your house. Otherwise, just keep doing it outside in nature in the garden, okay? There's no pressure here to do it in the house in a bin. Chat, let's see. My food forest is full of worms as I make Pathway Soil Bank, as this is their smorg. Smorg? Food Forest Permaculture says that. Oh, here we go. South Florida Sunshine. Hey, love this topic. Going to do the in-ground 5-gallon bucket with a gamma lid. This reminded me to get it out and get it in the composting bed I have. Thank you. Yeah, sounds fantastic. It is really hard, Adam, to get away from all the plastics. It is. More cold. Yes, it's going to be cold. Oops says the main thing I feed my worm beds is cornmeal. Wow. Negative 17 Celsius is 0 Fahrenheit. Okay. CR says, I've seen worms with the leaves and where I grow the sunflowers. Fantastic. My chat moved. Carol says, sorry I'm late. Was that something for mangoes? Yes, brick was cocoa coir. It was coconut coir. Okay, Tampa's Creek. Hey, listening from the bushes. Good to see you. Thanks for listening. John Doe 2023. I can send you some videos of my vermiculture operation. I mostly use do-it-yourself building on a budget. So if you have videos on your channel, we can all visit your channel. Are you the one that came in before and said you're a vermiculture person and you made the suggestion to do this topic? Because I didn't write down who mentioned it when we had like a brainstorming live. So thank you for coming by. But yeah, put videos on your channel for all the people to see. John Doe says, I have red wigglers and African night crawlers for sale along with castings. Gil Glitzy G's? Hi, saw your channel while browsing and stopped into view. I like your content and subbed. Well, thank you. Welcome to the gardening discussions that we have here over at Shawnee Grows. I have cannot of worms in my compost. I feel like that's a typo. We'll see if we have more details later on in the chat here. Radio Jonesy says it's around 70 here and blue skies. Do you have worms, Radio Jonesy, or did the wallabies eat those too? He's got wallabies eating his beautiful flowers. So we can talk about the foods in the bin, because if you have the wrong foods in the bin or too much food in the bin, it can create all these different kinds of problems. Since this is like a created environment versus out in nature for the bin. For our little worm farm. What to compost? We definitely want vegetables, eggshells, fruits, nutshells, coffee, tea, paper scraps, cardboard, house plants. That's interesting that they have that on there. Yard trimmings. What not to compost in your worm bin. I never put citrus or onions in it. Dairy products, fats and oils, produce stickers. Okay, you got to take the stickers off, guys. Diseased plants, eggs, meat, fish, bones, scraps, animal feces, and medication. This is, again, we're talking about our indoor bin. When you're composting outside, it's kind of a whole different game. Do your own research on how to handle a compost pile. Compost Everything, The Good Guide is by David the Good. Check it out. Great book. And you're feeding in moderation. You're only adding food to your worm farm bin when the scraps are mostly gone, because we don't want to have an overabundance of food and create like gnats and everything. We can talk more about things that go wrong as we flow through here. Should we look at worms? Does anyone want to go worm shopping? I didn't know there were so many different kinds of worms, and we're just going to hit the surface. But we have epigeic. I don't know how to say this one. That kind of worm. And this is from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm, who does ship to you. Now, for me, example, I wouldn't be ordering worms when it's this cold out in the mail. No way. But I do have a link in this description to his shop. I think it's an Amazon link. The blue worm. Can you believe it? There's a blue worm. Is that just blowing your mind? It's a traveling worm, India blue worm, native species of Asia. They grow 2 3/4 inches. They like temperatures 70 to 80. They reach adulthood in 3 to 5 weeks. Blue worms. What? We have the African nightcrawler. Tropical worm. It can withstand colder environments. They have a temperature limit of only 45 degrees Fahrenheit before they begin to struggle or die. The Alabama or Georgia jumper. So we have a warning in our gardening groups about jumping worms and how bad they are. And so if you see them in like a mix that you got from a store, you have to report it. And I'm assuming that's what this is talking about. This marking on here makes me think this is the jumper worm. That's bad. We don't want that spreading and making babies. The European nightcrawler, and there's a picture of it next to a red worm, it says. Super reds? Relatively easy, low maintenance, reproduce quickly, ideal for beginners. See, the red wiggler worm is what I had. They love to mate during more humid and warm conditions and can grow to be 5 inches long, 14 inches thick. See, mine didn't get very big. I produced so much kitchen scraps that I very quickly realized that the bin I started in was like way too small if I wanted to actually get my vegetable scraps ate up during the winter time, because your compost pile's frozen, right? You're just building on top of a frozen ice popsicle of compost. So I was trying to kind of mitigate that and have this worm farm inside, but I did not start a big enough bin, and I never proceeded into build a bigger bin, and we ended up getting rid of the worms. Would I start it all over again? Yeah, I was supposed to. That was the plan. Didn't get that far though. And it's not too late, but it's on the list, right? So that was the worms. And then moisture, temperature, maintenance is important in our worm bin. The bedding should feel like a wrung out sponge. If it's too wet, add more dry bedding, your shredded paper, cardboard, leaves. If it's too dry, you need to spray it with a little water. Use good water, you know, not, I would advise you not to use chlorine, fluoride filled tap water. I would use filtered water for your nice wormies. The ideal temperature range was 55 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Avoid placing the bin in direct sunlight or freezing temperatures. And then routine maintenance. So adding food scraps 1 to 2 times per week. Burying the food under the bedding to keep the system clean. So like this one, everything's just sitting on top. It needs to go under some bedding. Turning the bedding every few weeks, just kind of mixing it up, aerating to prevent compaction, checking on your worms. You're going to learn about their whole life cycle, right? You're going to see what foods are their favorites. You're going to see eggs. You're going to see babies. Healthy worms are active and plump. If you see lethargic or worms trying to escape, it's a sign of an imbalance. Too wet, too acidic, too hot. Harvesting methods. How are we supposed to get the castings out? This is the part I wasn't sure about, and it got frustrating to hand pick worms out. What? So different methods that I've read about here is dump and sort, let the worms do the sorting, divide and dump, alternate containers, mechanical harvester. So to talk briefly about the dump and sort is the method I did, and I don't recommend it. Can I close this? This thing is playing. I don't think there's an X on it. Okay. You literally like dump and pick all the worms out of it, and then you stick all the castings in what you want to use it in. And then you put worms in a new bin and you start the process all over. 2, let the worms do the sorting. Okay, so you take your bin, and in half of it, you scoot everything over and you put food on one half, and they eventually migrate over to the food, and then you just take out all of what's left and you replace all new bedding and make it a home again. So you just move them with the food. Divide and dump. Take material from one area of your bin, the worm castings, the worms, all of it, dump it in the garden, put fresh bedding in the area that you removed the material from. Alternate containers, have more than one worm bin. When one is full, leave it alone and start another one. Once it's all consumed, dump the contents of the bin in the garden. The cool thing about worms, before I get to mechanical harvester, is they understand where they are. So they're only going to produce enough of their colony and their family to fit in that environment. So once they've hit their max amount of children there, they're going to stop. They're just going to be in that state. Mechanical harvester, your material should be fairly dry at this point to do that. You're using a drum or a cylinder that sits on its side, angled downward. You put the material in, you rotate it. You're separating the castings from everything else. There's some kind of mesh or grate that catches everything. Did I have a picture of that? Here. So she's got, it's probably 1/2 inch hardware cloth. I don't think that's 1/4 inch to, like, you know, what I just said, the mechanical way. So we're going to talk about common problems after we catch up on the chat. MB Heritage Farms, hey, welcome to the worm conversation. There was 80s in Florida for degrees. Wow. John Doe says, I don't have any videos, but I'll work on that. Yeah, it'd be a really popular topic if you want to start a channel sharing what you know. And then in the channel, you can have links to maybe a website if you want to buy and sell things to people. I think that'd be good for you. Okay, what do we got? Glitzy G's. Sorry, I meant I had many worms in my compost. Fantastic. You must have a well-balanced system then, because the worms are very important. Mrs. J.K. Gardner, hey, welcome to this. Thanks for hearing me talk about worms for an hour because we have more to talk about. I have more to say. Thank you, Carol. Wallaby poo is like sheep poo, but larger. Is it? So it's cold? You can put it directly on the garden and it won't burn the plants? Wormhole, Creative Redundancy says. Screenshot that graph. Whoop, she says. I don't know what face that is. Mushroom mark. Eyes, worms, blue. I want blue worms. They're for not our environment. Adam says fats and oils are awesome for fungi and vermicompost in moderation. Yeah. Like I said, you got to do your own research. Everything has a purpose, right? In moderation. Oh crap, worms that jump. Oh, that is the stuff of nightmares. Yeah, contact your local extension office if you find jumping worms. They can help you identify. That's what our, hey, Simran Gardening Vlogs, that's what our gardening group always talks about is, I thought I heard a noise. I do have a family that lives here, so if we have to just pause for a second, bear with me here. The jumpers with the white ring around their neck-ish area, someone was bragging about the size of their earthworm and it was an invasive. Jump up nose and ears? Ugh. No thanks. Yes. Do you use worm castings? Do you have a compost pile? Simran Gardening Vlogs over in India? What Gear was talking to CR about finishing up supper, served it and eating chicken teriyaki stir fry and rice. Nice. Radio Jonesy says, my grandma used to say, put raw meat on your butt and the worms would come out. She also freaked me out when she kept saying she would do it when I was asleep. That is a different type of worm that we're not talking about this evening. Your grandma knows things though. Yeah, the chlorine and fluoride in the city tap water. Give your worms better water than that. Give yourself better water than that, okay? Raccoons would have that all over the hillside here. That pile of compost. Yeah, so whenever I add to my compost outside, I never leave the scraps exposed. I always get a brown layer on top and cover it up as soon as I'm adding. So some people take a bin and they just keep collecting the materials to make a compost pile. And then once they have enough, then they'll go out and go, okay, here's my layers, and they'll start a pile and let it sit. You must have been her little wiggle worm, Radio Jonesy, but wow, that could give a kid a scare. John Doe has an Etsy account. Oh, okay. Yeah, Etsy is a good place for all that. And then the videos would have to be on YouTube. 3 Bees Valley Farm Etsy account. All right. And yes, Radio Jonesy says, yep, she was a lovely old grandma. And then, yeah, like I said, the video on your YouTube channel. I have a rod. You plug it in after a rain and the worms jump out of the ground. So I saw a guy, he took a stick and he stuck it in the ground and he was beating on the stick, and that was sending out a thing, vibration, a sound, and the worms started coming up at it. Is this a real thing? Because back in the day, when someone's like, go get some worms for fishing, what did you do? You went to a shady, moist dirt area and you dug a hole and you found some. But sticking the thing in the ground and then doing this, has anybody done that? I am wanting to just do the in-ground. That might work better for you. Sadly, they are plastic bins, Miss Sharon, but they might see that as game. Never mind, dang raccoons. There are a lot of people that speak about having to have something binned and closed. I don't have to have something binned and closed outside here, but I would if it was in my house. And it's a job to stay ahead of them. Yes, the liquid fertilizer. We are going to talk about some compost tea, casting tea in a little bit. I'm glad that you use that. Simran says, I made lemon enzyme at home and it's best pesticide for the plants. Wonderful. It's all about creating stuff that helps us with what we already have, right? I also use kitchen waste that is fruits and vegetables peels as a fertilizer for my plants. Fantastic. Radio Jonesy says that's correct. You can put wallaby poo straight into your garden mix. Yeah, it's cold. Manure. Wonderful. I never knew that. I also don't have wallabies, but at least they're bringing you something. They're bringing you little presents, Jonesy, to feed your flowers. Did you hear what was blowing up earlier, Mark? It was ridiculous. Are jumping worms bad? Everybody in my Minnesota gardening chat group says, yeah, they're bad. So the sentence is we contact our local extension office, which we Google, and you send them a picture, or I've never had to do it. So I don't know if you send them like physically a worm or what, and then they're going to advise you on what to do, I imagine. I don't know if you have that in Canada. Is there like an extension office situation in Canada that you contact about if you have invasive worms in your yard? Yeah, I'm sure there's a whole list of them. Carol's talking about a shovel-shaped head worm. Liquid fertilizer from my kitchen waste. We're hopefully going to get into that stuff. We're hopefully going to do a live stream where we talk about recipes and resources and videos, because we all learn in different ways, and I like to provide all the different materials on how to turn regular day things into wonderful plant food. Hey, God's Desire for Me, welcome to our worm conversation. Right, dig into what a jumping worm, why they're bad, how to what are the rules in your area to how to handle them. Simran says I use vermicompost as a fertilizer and for soil formation for planters. Fantastic. I've made electric worm wands, says Oops. Wow. So it's true. You stick something in the ground and you make it vibrate and the worms come up to the surface. Is it hurting them? Is it loud? Do they think it's rain? Tell me more. What is the connection? You seen it on Curious George? What? Look at that. Curious George is teaching kids about worms. Okay, Mark has apparently done it. Okay, yes, fill me in tomorrow. Diva says poo-poo juice. Yes, that liquid food for our plants. Rabbit poo is cold manure. Yep, you can put it on your garden directly without worrying of burning. Yeah, it was very consistent fireworks. They had a whole bunch of them. Carol says, heard someone say they used their poo-poo juice as a foliar spray for getting rid of fungus. Yeah, like I said, I hope we have a chance to get into all of that information in a future live stream, because it's like, could talk about that for hours. Jumping worms are very bad, says Jay Dixon. Adam says, if I ever get jumping worms here in Southern Oregon, I'll probably be done with gardening. What? Okay, Jay says, in Canada, depends on the issue. Master Gardeners, Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, those are the names of like people you could contact about the question of jumping worms. Salon Diva V Home and Garden. Welcome to our worm conversation. We still have to talk about the problems and solutions for our indoor worm bins. And we need to talk about our worms in the news. And I want to share, how do worms even eat? So Diva says no extensions offices in Canada, and I personally won't open the can of worms by getting anyone who's in government employed to be aware of me. I know. So Florida Sunshine says, think with my shade and climate, I need to do one on antifungals. Did you see the microbial meter where you stick it in the soil and it tells you about your like microbiology kind of? I did have a link to it in a live stream when we were talking about the Seed to Summit harvest hosted by Seed Time. It's expensive, it's money, but it gives you information. You think that they think it's rain and it brings the worms up? What? Hello, Colonel Chris Wyatt. Good to see you. We're just talking about worms. Food Forest Permaculture is going to bed. Oh, come back tomorrow and catch the replay, and we can talk all about it over on your channel. Again, I have a link in the description for Food Forest Permaculture and his pathway soil banks and how he builds soil. Um, just let the chickens eat them. Well, okay, does anyone know if a jumping worm is bad for a chicken to eat? Oops says electricity shocks the ground. Plug-in wall, not hitting anything. The old days, you just dug a hole and you looked for a worm. You didn't stick things in the ground and shoot electricity and make noise. It's crazy. Are you a fisherman? Is it all the fishermen that do this? The vibration thing. Worm wands. Yeah, that was the term. In 2008, researchers from Vanderbilt University claimed that worms surface because the vibrations are similar to those produced by digging moles, which prey on the earthworms. Oh, so they're like, we have to get out of here. We're going to get eaten. Yeah, it's a biological meter. You stick it in the ground and it takes a sample, and I don't know anything past that. But yeah, I had a link to it in that live stream where we talked about that seed to harvest summit. Everyone's saying goodnight to Howie and hello to Colonel Chris Wyatt. Richard is here. Good morning. What are you up to? We're talking about worms, worm castings, worm bins. How do you like your worms, Richard? Gear says we dug night crawlers on a corn farm by a creek. Oh, there's a bunch of worms there. Okay, so let's talk about the things that go wrong. So there can be bad smells. The reason for that is overfeeding, poor ventilation, too much moisture. How do you solve that problem? You're going to stop adding food until the worms process everything. You can stir the bedding. We talked about before, if it's too wet, add more dry bedding, you know, your leaves, your shredded paper. Just have those in a station set up so it's all right there. Worms escaping the bin. Worms are on the loose. They're trying to leave the bin. So the environment is too wet, too dry, too hot, too cold, too acidic. It all can be those reasons. So you need to check the moisture, you need to check the temperature, you can test pH levels if you want to get into that. I know a lot of people with hydroponic gardening growing have pH tester pens. I think it's a pen. If it's too acidic, add crushed eggshells to neutralize and ensure that bin is not in direct sunlight or in overly cold areas. I said before that my worm bin was kept in my basement, which I do monitor the temperature, but when it's negative 30 outside, it's getting too cold in the basement for the worm bin, and I would have had to take it upstairs and put it in the kitchen where it's a more controlled temperature for them. If you see fruit flies or pests, that was the thing we talked about with the exposed food scraps on the top. Instead of covering the bedding on it to make that layer, you have to always bury the food scraps. You should not be overfeeding your worms. They do have a sentence here that says freezing the food scraps before adding them to kill pest eggs. Interesting. If your worms are lethargic or dying, they're having a stress from the environment. Again, the temperature, the moisture, the food quality, you need to check all those things. If you're seeing mites or white bugs in the bin, you are overfeeding and you have too much moisture, right? So the worm tea conversation got brought up and we must discuss. Does anyone use worm tea in their garden? We apply worm castings in many ways. Worm tea is one of them. So let's just quickly go over how are we using the worm castings after we have successfully fed worms, captured their poop. Now we need to put them somewhere. So adding them to your garden. We talked about putting them directly in the hole where the plant is going versus adding them as a whole and turning it under like you would with compost or lasagna gardening. You just want them directly where that seed's going to be. We talked about adding them to your seed starting mix. So let's say 80% potting soil or blend of what you've made to start your seedlings in, and then 20% worm castings. Established plants, expect to add 1 to 2 cups of worm castings to an established plant. Now again, There's all kinds of information online. I did not provide a graph, but all the links to the websites are in the description below. Lawns and turf would benefit from worm castings. Worm tea application. This is one way to make your worm castings go a long way. So your actively aerated compost tea is brewed over a 24 to 48 hour period using worm castings in a tightly woven mesh bag suspended in water. So you're picturing a 5-gallon bucket and cheesecloth, and you've put worm castings in the cheesecloth and tied it closed, and you're putting that in the bucket of water, and you're agitating the water to introduce oxygen to the system to feed the microbes. So you can do that with like a bubbler for a fish tank. You might have to weigh it down so like the bubbler hose stays in the bottom versus floating to the top. You kind of move your castings bag around. You're making, it's like a big giant tea. If you've ever made tea before, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes there's things added to this tea of worm castings to help boost the microbe population, because again, it's all about feeding the soil. So people will often add alfalfa, kelp meal, fish hydrolysate, which is another word for fish fertilizer, the liquid. We have molasses. We talked about all these things in our live stream with regenerative agriculture, how to build better soil, more sustainable food systems. Check that one out if you haven't. So it can be applied as a foliar spray or a root drench to actively, let's see here. Actively aerated tea should be used within a few hours after brewing is complete. So there's teas. Let me stop this. There's teas that we can talk about when we do our how to like handle pest control with things we've made, how to feed our plants with foliar sprays live stream, where you don't necessarily need an agitated oxygen aired environment. Because like, for example, Diva in the Dirt for sure does poo-poo juice. She isn't out there like aerating it and stirring it. It's sitting in a barrel, right? It's breaking down in its own time. So as far as dilution rates, I don't have that. I will have dilution rates when we do our live stream. I do have the link, like I said, in the description. There's plenty of videos out there that you can just type in like dilution rate for worm tea, because you're adding a little bit of tea to water, so it's a because this is a concentrate. Usually when you're doing it like this, it's a concentrate, and if you apply too much, you could hurt your plants, right? So that video I wanted to talk to you about, and then I'll go back to the chat here, is how to start a worm farm. And this is the video I watched when I did this last year with my kids. And then she has in the description a link for the free guide. And it was a pretty good, goes to your email, printable PDF, downloadable thing. Hey, It's a Good Life is her channel name. How to Start a Worm Farm is the title. Link is in the description. I can't play it or watch it with you, but you can see in the background, she does the make your own bin system versus purchasing bins like we have in the description from Urban Worm Farm, Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. I believe they sell stackable bins. I feel like they're overpriced and expensive. I feel like they don't make sense to me. There's also like bags I've seen. I'll just use a tote. Who doesn't? I have totes, So check out the description. There's books, links, videos. There might be a podcast in there. There's definitely links to supplies. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe for more gardening chats. And before we get to the worms in the news, I need to read the chat, because worms have been doing some things. Let's see if we find where I left off. I saw CR say digging this worm chat. There's the corn farm comment. Okay, Oops says, yes, I fish. My dad's dad taught me how to make them when I was 5. That was a really long time ago. Night crawlers are aptly named. And hey, gear, says Carol. Diva says, if it's stinky, add more browns. That's right. It's basically a compost pile, and to worms, it's a buffet. They poop it into the soil. Richard says, started gardening at the office in dead ground, discovered earthworms after a while. Earthworms are a good sign. To keep them going, keep them fed. They benefit the entire system. I would be hesitant to use a heating pad for the worm bin. I think the heating pad to me is like the medical kind versus like the heat mats for seed starting that I believe have a temperature regulator on it. We don't want to cook our worms, and then I can't plug stuff in where I had the worms at. That's why I brought them upstairs when I needed to, because it's not like it's -30 for a month. It's just a day here, a week there. Adam says, it's all about the microscope for knowing what microbiology is in the soil. Nematodes and naked amoeba are my favorite beneficial organisms to view. The bad guys are fun to see also. You have a microscope? That's amazing. Matt Powers is one that talks about all the microscope images of what's good and bad. He was also in our conversation from the live stream Seed to Harvest Summit from Seed Time. Oops says I crush calcium vitamin tablets to fix pH in my old deep freezer worm bin. Yeah, see, there we go. A deep freezer worm bin. You can use anything, guys. Jay Dixon says, innocent. Look, could the worms be better communicators about problems? Jay slides an old Nokia in the bin for texting worms. John Doe says, add dolomite to your compost bin if you add fruits or peat moss. Dolomite. We would love more nerding out about microbiology because it's so important. When I heard John Kemp talk about it for the first time, I'm hooked. I want to listen to him talk about it all the time. Never met a lasagna I didn't like, says Gear. South Florida Sunshine says, I've used the worm castings in my poo-poo juice, but then the next batch became an offering because I was afraid to open it. Was it a little stinky? As Carol says to Adam, nematodes are related to enemies in my state. Richard says, I know nothing about worms. Ooh, I'm going to show you how a worm eats here in a little bit. Started a compost heap and left it for a year. Took some of the compost and there's worms in it. The worms are red. If you didn't see earlier, we looked at a couple of different types of worms. I can't show you all the types of worms in the world because there's lots. But catch the replay if you missed that part, just to look at different worms. There is anaerobic and aerobic teas. Yes, I think we can get into that when we, in the future, have a live stream about the conversation, the with and without oxygen. Adam says to Carol, root feeder nematodes for sure are enemies. Bacterial and fungal feeder nematodes are detrimental to a healthy soil food web. Simran says tea leaves are a very good fertilizer for plants. Green Greg's used to do worm bin videos. Yeah, if you guys know of any channels that have actively been doing this conversation we're having, let us know. We can add it to our watch later list. Storms, Weirdos, and Cats. Usually it's a ratio of 1 to 10. Yes. Usually, this means for every cup of worm tea, you would add 10 cups of water to create a diluted solution for watering your plants. Yes. And I always add foliar sprays at night so the sun isn't on them and the plants can absorb them in a calm state. I am going to really actually do more foliar feedings this season with the garden. I promise. Carol says, yes, those not nematodes are the devil, I think is that little picture. Oops says 5-gallon buckets too. I like my old deep freezers because they're bigger than bins. Yeah, I quickly filled a bin very fast with a family of 5 and our food scraps. I didn't have enough worms because I was trying to reduce the amount of kitchen waste that is just going on a frozen icicle compost pile in the winter. The word was essential, not detrimental. All right, spelling correction here. Hello, Richard's wife, Mariska. Hello. Do you garden as well? Goodbye, Simmering Gardening Vlogs, breakfast time in India. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Hit the replay for the last half when you find some free time. Replays are forever. Oh, I have a poll. Yeah. Don't forget to do the poll. Remind me again to talk about that. I'll let you have some more time with the poll and then I'll click the button. Oops, just stacked buckets wherever you can keep them. Keep in touch. Yeah, it is fun to learn. You learn every day in every way. Learn as you grow, as we say here. You've wanted a worm bin, but you get overwhelmed. Well, you just sort of think about it and you read up on it and research it and decide, okay, do I really want to start this? And if you try it and you don't like it, you don't have to keep it, you know? The offering was beyond stinky, might have made a biological weapon, says Carol. The thing she brewed in her bucket. Um, the in-ground method for burying the bucket, is that what you're talking about? Mariska's office is in front of the garden. Ah, okay. We're having a coffee and she's looking at our garden. Oh. Gardening is very magical for the mind and body. I was a guest on Unique Prepping with co-hosts Diva in the Dirt and South Florida Sunshine, where we talked about your mind on gardening. And I have it co-streamed to my channel. It was a live stream. And we broke down what happens to your brain when you touch that dirt and how beneficial gardening is for the entire world. I truly believe that. South Florida Sunshine, you basically make their buffet in a 5-gallon bucket, drill holes in the bucket, and sink it into the soil, even of an elevated bed. You're going to use the gamma lid, which is the easy twist on, twist off versus snap. Richard says, so, Shawnee Grows, you encouraged me to garden, and Mariska loves it. Thank you. Hey, everyone's happy. Jello brain. Okay, let's talk about some worms in the news. I have links in the description for you to read these articles. This is about hungry waxworms eating through plastic and digesting it too. So this is what the worm looks like. It is armed with enzymes that can break down plastics that would otherwise take decades or even centuries to degrade. Again, they're called waxworms. I believe the next article has my sentence that is easy to understand how to explain what they're doing. So researchers began collecting the liquid excreted from the worms' mouths. I hope Homestead Aquarius is still here. They found the saliva contained 2 critical enzymes, Ceres and Demeter, named after the Roman and Greek goddesses of agriculture, respectively, which were able to oxidize the polyethylene in the plastic, essentially breaking it down that material on contact. So here's another picture, of this yellow mealworm. This one's called a mealworm. The other one said waxworm. Now, is it the same thing? I don't know. They are... Let's see. This is the one I think that had that sentence that I wanted to read to you guys. Okay, it would take 100 mealworms, 138 days, which is like 4.5 months, to eat one disposable mask from 2020. One mask. So think about the amount of masks that were used in a day. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And then this one is scientists develop an artificial worm gut to break down plastics. This is from phys.org. They've developed an artificial worm gut to break down plastics, offering hope for a nature-inspired method to tackle the global plastic pollution problem. You know, how about we just like get rid of plastic, stop using it, you know? They're feeding worms with plastics and cultivating their microbes found in their guts. And again, you guys are going to have to read this because I'm not going to read articles to you in full. Darkling beetle, commonly sold as pet food and known as a superworm for a nutritional value, can survive on a diet of plastic because its gut contains bacteria capable of breaking down the types. A single worm can only consume about a couple milligrams of plastic in a lifetime, so imagine the number of worms that would be needed if we were to rely on them to actually process our plastic waste. Yeah. So that's that conversation. Let's stop sharing and see what you're saying, and then I'll move on to how a worm eats. Okay, good. Homestead Aquarius was here. Um, if I ever told you, Shawnee, but we feed waxworms. I'm not sure what are you talking about? You're gonna have to explain it to me in person, because more words, please. Oh, Adam says, Jay, we have got to start our own individual channels. They do look like a grub to me. Yes, I thought the same thing. So cool about waxworms, and that was a great night on Unique Prepping. Okay, Oops says, I raise waxworms too. Do you use bins? Like a drawer system? They're actually a moth larvae. Worms smiling for the news photos. Wait till you see the inside of a worm. Croc Gardner, hello, welcome to our chat. We're talking about worms. Waxworms are really good fish bait too. Not the same as mealworms. Really? Interesting. I'm assuming it's a specific fish that goes after them, right? Croc Gardner says, I've used waxworms for bait. What's the fish that you're baiting? Which one likes the waxworms is, I guess, my question. CR says, we need a bigger can of worms for that plastic then. It's just like, okay, yeah, we need to, anyways. You are talking about at work, okay. We feed a waxworm farm. What? How come we've never talked about this? What? You've worked there for many years now. It's for bluegill? Mark says big fish. I'm talking to the people that actually fish, Mark. Okay, let's look at a worm's body, shall we? Should we look at some anatomy here? So I'll show you the picture and then I'll read you. Let's see, how do worms eat? I'll read you a spiel and you can look at a picture while I read to you, huh? Does that sound good? Here it is. Worms extend their pharynx, which is their throat, out of their mouth. So you can see the tip here of mouth, brain, blood vessel. Let's see, I have to go back to that page and scroll for you here. How's that? Does that look better? Okay. They use their strong lip muscles to pull in small pieces of soil, organic matter. Like we know. We just talked about all of the stuff they put in their mouth, okay? Digestion. The material travels down the esophagus into the crop. So you can see crop here, where it is stored. The crop passes the material into the gizzard, a muscular organ that grinds and crushes it further, which is the next big lump here. The ground material then moves into the intestine, and then the digestive enzymes break it down into nutrients. The worm absorbs the nutrients, and then it is a waste that is expelled, just like we do. Did anyone know that worms had crops and gizzards? Show of hands. Who already knew this? Who was shocked? Did I teach you something tonight? Carol says, I have some fishing poles. Need to renew my license. Worm spokesmodel for the body images, says Jay. Carol says, works are wonderful and amazing creatures. Must be worms. Worms are amazing, but I still find them gross. It's one of the first things kids learn about is worms. Oops, not like earthworm bins. Okay. Bins with no holes at the bottom, just tiny air holes in lid with sawdust, and you can keep them in the fridge to prolong their larvae stage. I catch just about any fish on them. Oh, really? There isn't like a specific one. So, oops, remind me if you have videos on this or not. And you're selling these, I'm assuming. They're not just for you. Mushroom Mark has facts. Birds have gizzards. CR, you stayed. You stayed to see how a worm eats. And now we know how it ends, folks. Gardner's learning. Storms has got his hand up. The nerdy guy already knew. We're glad you're here, though, Adam. You can teach us a thing or two. Yeah, you should start a channel. Let's just do that. You should do that. CR's got his hand up. Pet birds, gizzards, no surprised. Carol says, I knew about gizzard, but forgot the other parts except for one end is the mouth and one is the anus. Right. It's fun to talk to kids about the anatomy of a worm. It sure is. So check out the description for all the links and articles to books and videos, like I said before, some of the tools you might need if you want to get started with a worm bin. If you want to just compost outside, there's articles to show you how to get started with that. Don't forget to join the community, shawneegrows.com. We offer a free downloadable guide for square foot gardening, like in a square foot, how many seeds of each type of plant should go if you're go in that space. If you're wanting to like maximize the space, it can be in ground or raised beds or in a container. There are two other ones for purchase. One is a salad garden. I tell you what to put in it and how to take care of the plants, and there's some extra bonus papers in there. And the other one, garden planning checklist, which goes along with our live stream garden planning checklist. And it kind of gets like what's in here and questions you have and thoughts into paper. So then you can go seed shopping and then draw your map. And maybe you're using Seed Time for your map, which if you don't know what Seed Time is, visit Diva in the Dirt. She has done live streams and videos explaining what that system is. It is a free planting calendar for gardeners. Carol is from South Florida Sunshine, and she has wonderful live streams as well. If you have not seen her channel, go subscribe. She usually goes live on Fridays and teaches us wonderful things. Mushroom Mark says, peace out. Yes, please get some rest for the week ahead of us, and the weather is gonna be great. Oops, says no vids. Oh, you don't sell. They're just for you? They are just my fish bait I raise. Wow. That's so cool. Poll, says CR. Oh, how do you get to that tab? Okay. Ending poll. The question was, what interests you most about vermiculture? Is it growing healthier plants, reducing food waste sustainably, setting up and maintaining a worm bin, and learning worm biology and behavior? The winner of interest is growing healthier plants, which we all should always think about, because healthier plants that have healthier immune systems have a better chance, and they have a better nutritional value for our bodies, our animals' bodies. It's all about the gut health. CR says, I voted for reduced food waste, by the way. Thank you for sharing that. South Florida Sunshine says, yay, this was great. Looking forward to your next one for the holiday. Okay, so tomorrow is Monday. There is a holiday, and so I have a free space of time in my life, and I'm going to give it to you guys. I'm going to discuss companion plants. What is the purpose of them? Why do we need to consider companion plants in our garden space? What do they do, and all of that? So we've been preparing that today. I'm going to have it ready tomorrow. The live stream hasn't been posted yet, but it's probably going to be 9 p.m. Central Time, Monday night tomorrow. So subscribe to get the notification. Thank you, Radio Jonesy. Love your work and passion, Shawnee. I do love gardening very much, and I can't do very much of it right now in the winter, so we're just going to keep talking about it. Storms, Radios, and Cat says, I know this is off topic, but this snowplow just cleared our road. Finally, it is still snowing on top of all the rain we've had, and you have more snow coming. Glad the plow is out and safe. There is a Seed Time affiliate link from Diva in the Dirt. Yep, Marine77. Miss Sharon is so kind. She just puts all the good stuff in the chat for all you guys. There it is. It's okay to be on your phone with Jello Brain. Fish bait? No, says Gardening Warrior. Jay Dixon says to Adam, good to see you again. I resist the pressure to have my own gardening channel. You do a great job, Jay, and everybody else's gardening channel. Croc Gardener says, "Oh, this sounds excellent." About the companion plants. What? What? Homestead Aquarius? What? I like to give information in different formats because we all learn different ways. Time to wiggle out. CJ, bye, CR. Thanks for coming. Peaceful Des. Hey, came in to share some support before I have to head to bed in 20 minutes. You caught us at the end of our show. We talked about worms in the garden, worms in your house. Do you have a worm bin? Do you want a worm bin? Do you know how a worm eats food? We talked about worms in the news. Catch the replay for all the information. Gardening Warriors doing food prep stuffs. Food's good for the body. Carol is heading to bed. Thank you for connecting with us tonight. And with that being said, we have gone through everything. So say your final goodbyes. I always encourage you to grow every day in every way. You learn as you grow. You don't have to know it all to start. You just start, right? Gear says it's early yet. Well, I'm going to head to an after party somewhere. Mike's Chaotic Gardening. It's so good to see you. I hope you were able to listen to this. I don't remember if I saw you earlier. Appreciate Mike's Chaotic Gardening. WIG 2024 hashtag. Check it out. Gear says, have a good and grow marigolds. Marigolds are wonderful. And Gear gave me a suggestion. I think it's called strawberry marigolds, and I'm planting them. You fed your worm beds tonight. It's every Sunday. It's great to have a routine with happy worms, happy gardener. Good to know, Gardening Warrior. You were lurking. You're a viewer in our chat. I'm glad. I'm so glad that you were able to make it. The final goodbye is happening, everyone. I'm sorry I can't keep it going. Again, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Central Time, I'll try and get the live set up so you get a notification. We're going to talk about companion planting. Thank you all for being here to talk about worms and poop. See you around.